The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the human ambassador walked to the center platform. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood barely 5 feet tall, a tiny figure among the towering alien delegates. The Vorthan representative loomed 3 meters above her, his scaled body covered in ceremonial armor that had been forged in the heart of a dying star. The Mindari floated in their gravity bubbles, their translucent forms shimmering with bioluminescence that pulsed in complex patterns. The Kethrix clicked their mandibles nervously, their compound eyes following every movement the human made with the intensity of creatures who had learned to fear predators. Sarah cleared her throat. She had practiced this speech 100 times on the journey here, but nothing could prepare her for the weight of this moment. Humanity's fate hung in the balance. Every word she spoke would be recorded, analyzed, and debated by civilizations that had existed when our ancestors were still swinging from trees. "Honored delegates of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I stand before you today to address the accusations made against the human species. You claim we are too aggressive, too dangerous, too unpredictable to join your alliance of civilizations." The Vorthan High Commander, a massive creature named Krazith, let out a rumbling laugh that echoed through the chamber like distant thunder. His kind had conquered 1,000 worlds over 10,000 years. They feared nothing in the galaxy, except perhaps the strange little creatures from the blue planet called Earth who had appeared seemingly from nowhere and spread like wildfire. "Your species has existed for barely 100,000 years, Krazith said, his voice booming through the chamber's acoustic systems. "You have been traveling among the stars for less than 2 centuries. Yet in that time, you have expanded faster than any species in recorded history. You fight wars among yourselves. You destroy your own planet with pollution and weapons. And now you ask to join us as equals. The audacity is almost amusing." Sarah nodded slowly. She had expected this dismissal. The Council had been watching humanity for decades, studying their rapid advancement with growing concern and fascination. When humans first left their solar system and encountered the Mindari scout ship, the entire galaxy had held its breath. Most species took thousands of years to develop faster-than-light travel after their first crude attempts at spaceflight. Humans had done it in less than 300 years after their first powered flight, in a wooden contraption held together with wire. "You are correct, High Commander," Sarah said, refusing to be intimidated. "We are young. We are aggressive by your standards. We do fight among ourselves sometimes, but I would like to tell you a story about what my species has survived to reach this moment, a story about why we are the way we are." The chamber grew quiet. Even the Kethrix stopped their nervous clicking. The Mindari colors shifted to patterns indicating deep interest. 66 million years ago, Sarah began, her voice taking on a storyteller's rhythm, long before humans existed, long before any mammal larger than a house cat walked our world, a rock from space hit our planet. It was not a large rock by cosmic standards, just 10 kilometers wide. But when it struck, it released energy equivalent to 1 billion nuclear bombs. She paused, letting her words sink in. Several delegates murmured in their various languages. "The impact killed nearly everything on our planet. Giant creatures that had ruled Earth for 150 million years died in a single day. The sky turned black with dust and debris. The temperature dropped so fast that plants died and the food chain collapsed. Fires burned across entire continents. Tsunamis taller than your tallest buildings swept across the oceans. Nothing could grow. Nothing could survive." She activated a holographic display, showing the ancient asteroid strike, the devastation spreading across the planet. But life survived. Small creatures, our distant ancestors, hid underground in burrows and caves. They ate insects and roots and whatever scraps they could find in the darkness. They waited while the world above them burned and then froze. For years, they survived on almost nothing, adapting to conditions that should have killed them. The Mindari delegate pulsed with soft light, colors indicating wonder and disbelief. Their species had never faced such a catastrophe. Their world had been stable for billions of years, a gentle paradise that nurtured life rather than testing it. When the sun finally returned and the plants began to grow again, they crawled out and started over. That was not the only test our world gave us. There have been 5 mass extinction events in Earth's history. 5 times almost everything died, and 5 times life found a way to continue. Sarah let the display show the timeline of Earth's catastrophes, each one a near ending that had somehow become a new beginning. My species, Homo sapiens, emerged 200,000 years ago. We were weak compared to the other animals. We had no claws to defend ourselves. We had no fangs to tear our food. We had no armor to protect our soft bodies. We could not fly like the birds or swim like the fish or run like the great cats. We were slow, fragile, easily killed. The predators of our world should have wiped us out in a single generation. Yet here you stand, the Mindari said, their voice like wind chimes in a gentle storm. Sarah smiled. Yes, here I stand, because we had something the other animals did not have. We could think beyond the immediate moment. We could plan for tomorrow and remember yesterday. We could work together in groups larger than any other species. And most importantly, we refused to give up, no matter how hopeless things seemed. She called up a new holographic display, showing images of ancient Earth. Ice stretched across continents like a frozen disease. Snow-covered mountains that had once been green and full of life. Glaciers miles thick ground their way across the land. 70,000 years ago, a supervolcano erupted on our world. The sun disappeared behind ash clouds for years. Temperatures dropped across the entire planet. Crops failed. Animals died. Our population fell to perhaps 10,000 individuals. 10,000 humans in all the world, scattered in small tribes that had no contact with each other. We should have died out. Any reasonable calculation of survival probability says we should have become extinct. The Kethric's ambassador leaned forward, her compound eyes gleaming with fascination despite her species' natural caution. Her people had evolved on a stable world with predictable seasons and abundant resources. They had never faced such challenges. But we did not die, Sarah said, her voice growing stronger. We huddled in caves during the endless winter. We shared food when there was barely enough for one person. We told stories around small fires to keep hope alive in the darkness. We made tools from stone and bone, weapons to hunt the animals that wanted to eat us. We wore the skins of creatures we had killed to stay warm. And when the ice finally retreated, when the sun returned and the plants grew again, we spread across every continent on our world. She changed the display to show the great human migrations, the spread of humanity across the globe. We crossed oceans on boats made of wood and animal hide, navigating by the stars our ancestors had watched for generations. We climbed the highest mountains where the air was too thin to breathe. We walked through the driest deserts where no water fell for years. We survived in frozen wastelands and steaming jungles and everywhere in between. We adapted to every environment our world could offer because we had no choice. Survival was the only option. The display shifted again, showing the progression of human civilization. Mud huts became stone buildings. Stone buildings became cities with walls and towers. Cities spread like lights across the night side of the planet, growing brighter with each passing century. We invented agriculture, learning to grow our food instead of hunting for it. We built cities where thousands of people could live together. We created art and music and mathematics and philosophy. We asked questions about the universe and worked to find answers. We fought wars, yes. Terrible wars that killed millions of our own kind. Wars over land and resources and ideas, and sometimes over nothing at all. Sarah's voice dropped, becoming solemn. But after every war, we rebuilt what had been destroyed. After every plague that swept through our populations, we found cures and treatments. After every disaster that should have ended us, we came back stronger than before. This is not just our history. This is our nature. This is what being human means. High Commander Krazeth shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His species had evolved as apex predators on a planet with abundant resources and few competitors. They had never faced true hardship, never been pushed to the edge of extinction. Their conquest of the stars had been driven by boredom and ambition, and the simple desire for more, not by necessity. Looking at this small human female, he felt something he had never experienced before. He was not sure if it was respect or fear. "And then," Sarah said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper that still carried to every corner of the great chamber, "we faced our greatest challenge. 200 years ago, we discovered we were not alone in the universe." The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Every delegate knew this part of the history, but hearing it from a human perspective was different. "Your scout ships found us. You observed us from orbit, cataloging our species like we were insects in a jar for your study. You debated whether to contact us or destroy us before we became a threat to your established order. You decided to wait and watch, to see what we would do with ourselves." Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. This was supposed to be classified information, known only to the highest levels of the council. Sarah's eyes hardened as she continued. "Yes, we know about your debates. We intercepted your communications using technology you thought we were decades away from developing. We decoded your language in months when your experts predicted it would take us years. We learned you were deciding our fate without asking us what we wanted, and we responded the only way we knew how." She pulled up another display, showing the rapid expansion of human space travel. In 50 years, humans had gone from a single world to 100 colonies scattered across multiple star systems. Their ships, crude by galactic standards but remarkably effective, pushed deeper into unexplored space with each passing year. "We built ships. We established colonies on worlds your experts said were uninhabitable. We created an economy that spans 100 star systems and is growing every day. Not because we wanted to conquer the galaxy, but because we knew that if we stayed on one world, we would be vulnerable. If one planet could be destroyed by an asteroid or a supervolcano or a war, we needed to spread to many planets. If one enemy could threaten us, we needed allies and resources and technology to defend ourselves and our children." The Vorthan High Commander stood up, his massive form casting a shadow over the human ambassador that she ignored completely. "You speak of survival," he said, his voice like grinding stones. "But your kind brings chaos wherever you go. Your traders disrupt markets that have been stable for centuries. Your explorers claim worlds that should belong to older and wiser species. Your soldiers fight with a ferocity that makes no logical sense. You throw yourselves into battle with no regard for your own lives. This is not civilized behavior." Sarah looked up at the towering alien without flinching, her small form radiating defiance. "You are right," she said. "We do fight hard. We fight like every battle is our last, because for most of our history it was. Every hunt could be our last meal. Every winter could be the one that killed our tribe. Every enemy could be the one that wiped us out completely. We learned over thousands of generations of struggle that hesitation means death, that giving up means extinction, that the only way to survive is to fight with everything we have and never stop fighting." She stepped closer to the Vorthan, her tiny form a study in defiance against his massive bulk. "Your species has ruled this sector for 10,000 years. You have never faced a real threat to your existence. You have never been pushed to the edge of survival and forced to claw your way back. You conquer worlds because you can, not because you must. And that makes you powerful in some ways, but it also makes you complacent. It makes you soft." The chamber erupted in angry murmurs. No one spoke to the Vorthan High Commander this way. No one dared to challenge the rulers of 1,000 worlds. But Sarah Chen was human, and humans had faced worse than angry aliens. They had faced extinction itself and refused to accept it. The council called a recess after Sarah's speech, the delegates needing time to process what they had heard. The human delegation gathered in their temporary quarters, a small suite of rooms that felt cramped after the vast council chamber. Sarah sat at the head of the table, rubbing her temples while her team reviewed the data from the session. "That was bold," said Dr. Marcus Webb, the delegation's chief xenologist. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen much in his 60 years. He was one of the leading experts on alien psychology, having spent decades studying the species humanity had encountered. "Perhaps too bold. The Vorthen don't take well to being challenged, especially in public. You may have made a permanent enemy." Sarah shrugged, accepting the cup of coffee her aide offered. "They were going to deny our petition anyway. Their minds were made up before I said a word. The speech was never meant for them. It was meant for the others. The Mindari who have been watching our expansion with interest. The Kethrix who live in fear of the Vorthen hegemony. The smaller species who might see in us a chance for change." Captain James Torres, head of security for the delegation, nodded approvingly. He was a former Marine who had served in 3 colonial conflicts, his body marked with scars from battles on a dozen worlds. "The Kethrix ambassador looked very interested during your speech. Their species has been under Vorthen control for 5 centuries. They might see us as potential allies against their overlords." "Or potential threats," Dr. Webb cautioned. "We need to be careful about how we position ourselves. If the Council thinks we're trying to build a coalition against the Vorthen, they'll deny our petition and possibly take hostile action. We could be facing a war we're not ready to fight." Sarah stood and walked to the window. Outside, the artificial environment of the Council station stretched for kilometers in every direction. Gardens and buildings from 100 different species created a patchwork of alien architecture that should have been chaotic but somehow worked together. Somewhere out there, delegates were discussing humanity's fate over drinks and meals, making deals that would shape the future of the galaxy. "Do you know what I think about, Marcus?" she said, not turning from the window. "I think about my grandmother. She was born in a refugee camp during a war that killed millions. Her parents fled their country with nothing but the clothes on their backs. They had no food, no shelter, no money, no hope, but they survived. They rebuilt their lives in a new country. They had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And now their great-granddaughter is negotiating with alien empires for the future of humanity." She turned to face her team, her eyes bright with determination. "We have always been survivors. We have always found a way forward when there seemed to be no path. This is just another challenge, another ice age, another asteroid to dodge. And we will overcome it the same way we overcame everything else. By being smart, by being tough, and by never, ever giving up." A chime sounded, indicating an incoming communication request. Dr. Webb checked the display, and his eyebrows rose in surprise. "It's the Mindari delegation. They want a private meeting." Sarah smiled. The game was beginning to get interesting. The Mindari met them in a neutral chamber, a room specifically designed to accommodate multiple species with different environmental needs. The alien delegation consisted of 3 individuals, their translucent bodies floating in gravity bubbles that simulated their home world's lighter conditions. They communicated through a combination of bioluminescent patterns and translated speech, their colors shifting constantly as they expressed emotions that humans were only beginning to understand. "Ambassador Chen," the lead Mindari said, their voice soft and musical like distant bells. "We found your speech illuminating. It provided perspectives on your species that we had not fully considered." Sarah bowed respectfully, using the gesture of acknowledgement she had learned during her training. "Thank you, Delegate Luminara. I hope to provide some perspective on human nature that the Council had not heard before." The Mindari pulsed with colors that the translation device interpreted as amusement mixed with genuine interest. "You spoke of survival, of hardship, of extinction and recovery. These are concepts my species understands poorly, I must admit. Our world has been stable for 3 billion years. We evolved intelligence through cooperation and peaceful exploration, not competition and conflict. We find your species fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. We mean you no harm, Sarah said carefully, choosing her words with precision. We seek only to find our place among the stars. Perhaps not intentionally, Luminara replied, their colors shifting to deeper shades. But your very nature is disruptive. You change things simply by existing. You push boundaries that other species accept as fixed. You refuse to accept limits that have stood for millennia. In the 1,000 years since we achieved space travel, we have colonized exactly 12 worlds, all similar to our own, all stable and predictable and safe. In 2 centuries, you have spread to 100 systems, adapting to conditions that would kill most species within days. Sarah nodded, acknowledging the truth of the observation. We had no choice. Our home world was dying under the weight of our own success. Climate change, resource depletion, overpopulation. If we had stayed on Earth, we would have destroyed ourselves within a few generations. Space travel was our only hope, our only path to survival. The Mindari exchanged glances, their colors shifting rapidly in what seemed to be intense private communication. This is what we wanted to discuss, Luminara said finally. The Vorthan see you as competitors, as threats to their dominance. They fear your expansion will eventually challenge their empire. They will vote against your petition, and they have enough influence and enough allies to sway the council against you. We expected as much, Sarah admitted. But, Luminara continued, their colors brightening, there are other powers in this galaxy. Powers that have grown tired of Vorthan hegemony. Powers that see potential in your species that others fear. Sarah's heart began to beat faster. This was the opening she had hoped for, the crack in the galactic order that humanity might exploit. What are you proposing? She asked. The Mindari's colors shifted to a deep blue, indicating serious intent. The Vorthan conquered through strength and maintained control through fear, but their empire is old and old empires become brittle. They have not faced a true challenge in millennia. They have forgotten how to adapt, how to change, how to truly survive. Luminara floated closer to Sarah, their translucent form shimmering with inner light. Your species remembers. You carry the lessons of survival in your very genes, in every cell of your bodies. We believe you could be the catalyst for change in this galaxy, not through conquest but through example. Show the other species that there is another way, that survival does not require submission to the Vorthan. Sarah considered the offer carefully. Allying with the Mindari could give humanity powerful friends with advanced technology and ancient wisdom, but it could also paint a target on their backs, marking them as enemies of the established order. What would you need from us? She asked. For now, nothing but your presence. Continue to expand. Continue to adapt. Continue to show the galaxy what a species forged in hardship can accomplish. When the time is right, when the moment comes, we will stand with you. Sarah extended her hand, a human gesture of agreement that she had explained during her diplomatic training. Luminara wrapped a tendril of soft light around it, their species equivalent of a handshake. We have a deal, Sarah said. The final session of the council was scheduled for the next day. Sarah spent the night preparing, but her mind kept wandering to the weight of the moment. Tomorrow would determine whether humanity joined the galactic community as equals or remained isolated outsiders, possibly facing hostile action from species who feared what they might become. As she reviewed her notes for the 100th time, a soft knock came at her door. It was Captain Torres, his face grim in a way that made her stomach drop. "We have a problem," he said. "Our intelligence network just intercepted a Vorthan communication. They're planning to present evidence that humans are too dangerous to be admitted. Evidence of our wars, our weapons, our most violent moments in history." Sarah's heart sank. What kind of evidence? Everything. The world wars that killed 100 million people. Nuclear weapons that could destroy cities in an instant. biological warfare experiments, genocide, every atrocity we've ever committed against each other. They're going to parade our darkest history in front of the entire council and every observer in the galaxy. Sarah closed her eyes. She had known this moment might come. Humanity's past was not clean. They had done terrible things to each other, things that would horrify the peaceful species of the galaxy, things that even she found hard to justify or explain. "Is there anything we can do to stop it?" she asked. Tors shook his head. "Not without revealing our intelligence capabilities, which would cause its own problems. And even then, the Vorthen would just find another way to present the information. They want this to happen." Sarah sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the wall. Then, slowly, a smile crossed her face that made Tors slightly nervous. "Let them," she said. Tors looked at her in confusion. "Ambassador. Let them show our history. Every war, every weapon, every terrible moment. Because that's only half the story. And tomorrow, I'm going to tell them the other half." The council chamber was packed for the final session. Word had spread through diplomatic channels that the Vorthen had something planned, something dramatic. Species from across the galaxy had sent observers, eager to see the fate of the upstart humans who had caused so much discussion. High Commander Krazeth took the floor first, his massive form commanding attention from every corner of the vast chamber. "Honored delegates," he began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "Yesterday the human ambassador spoke of survival, of hardship. She painted her species as victims, as underdogs who overcame impossible odds through determination and courage. But she left out crucial information, information that reveals the true nature of humanity." He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber, and images began to appear. Trenches filled with bodies from a war that had consumed a continent. Mushroom clouds rising over cities turned to ash in an instant. Mass graves stretching to the horizon. Concentration camps where millions had been systematically murdered. Weapons of unimaginable destruction tested on living populations. "This is humanity," Krazeth said, his voice dripping with contempt. "A species that slaughtered millions of its own kind over territory, over resources, over differences in belief and appearance. They created weapons capable of destroying their entire planet dozens of times over. They experimented with diseases designed to kill entire populations. They are not survivors deserving of sympathy. They are predators, and they will bring their violence to the stars." The chamber erupted in murmurs of shock and horror. Many delegates had never seen such graphic evidence of human capacity for violence. The Mindari's colors shifted to shades of deep distress. Even the hardened Kethric seemed disturbed by the images. Krazeth continued for nearly an hour, cataloging every human atrocity in painstaking detail. The slave trades that had lasted centuries, the colonial massacres, the ethnic cleansings, the weapons programs that had produced horrors beyond imagination. By the end, many delegates were openly calling for humanity to be quarantined, contained, or destroyed before they could spread their violence to other worlds. Then it was Sarah's turn. She walked to the center platform slowly, deliberately. Her face showed no shame, no fear, no embarrassment. She looked at the images still floating in the air, the evidence of humanity's darkest moments displayed for all to see. "The High Commander is correct," she said, her voice clear and strong. "We did all of these things. We killed millions of our own kind. We created weapons of mass destruction. We committed atrocities that haunt us to this day. I will not deny any of it." The chamber fell silent, surprised by her complete admission. But the High Commander left out what happened next. She began to manipulate the holographic display, adding new images alongside the old ones. "After the First World War killed millions, we created international organizations to prevent future conflicts. We said never again, and we meant it. After the Second World War showed us the horror of genocide, We wrote declarations of universal rights that protected every person regardless of their origin. After we saw what nuclear weapons could do to cities full of innocent people, we signed treaties to limit their use and began the long process of disarmament. New images appeared alongside the horrors: peace conferences where former enemies shook hands, humanitarian missions that saved millions of lives, medical breakthroughs that cured diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia, environmental restoration efforts that brought devastated lands back to life. Every time we fell into darkness, we found our way back to the light. Every time we committed an atrocity, we vowed never again. And while we have not always kept those vows, while we have sometimes failed and fallen again, we have never stopped trying. We have never given up on becoming better than we were. She looked directly at Krazeth, meeting his eyes without flinching. You show us our worst moments and ask how we can be trusted. I ask you this: what species that has never faced hardship, never been tested, never fallen and risen again can truly be trusted? You know only your strength. We know our weakness. And that knowledge makes us humble. It makes us careful. It makes us determined to do better. She turned to address the full council, spreading her arms to encompass every delegate in the vast chamber. Yes, we are dangerous. We are capable of terrible things, but we are also capable of incredible compassion that crosses all boundaries. We create art and music that moves the soul to tears. We build hospitals and schools and homes for those who have nothing. We risk our lives to save strangers we have never met. We love with a passion that defies all logic. We are not just survivors. We are dreamers, builders, explorers, lovers, artists. We are everything, all at once, the best and worst of what intelligent life can be. Her voice rose with passion. We did not come to the stars to conquer. We came because it is in our nature to reach for the unknown. We came because we refuse to accept limits that others say cannot be crossed. We came because somewhere, deep in our genes, is the memory of our ancestors looking up at the night sky and wondering what was out there. She paused, letting her words echo in the silent chamber. You can reject us, you can fear us, you can try to contain us, but you cannot stop us, because we have survived ice ages and asteroid impacts. We have survived plagues and famines and wars. We have survived everything this universe has thrown at us, and we are still here, still reaching, still dreaming, still fighting to be better than we were yesterday. She raised her hand, pointing toward the stars visible through the chamber's transparent ceiling. And now we build empires, not empires of conquest, but empires of hope, colonies where humans and aliens live together in peace, research stations where the mysteries of the universe are unlocked for all species, trading posts that connect distant worlds in networks of commerce and friendship. This is what we offer the galaxy, not violence but vitality, not destruction but creation. She lowered her hand and spoke quietly, but her voice carried to every corner of the chamber. We are humanity. We have earned our place among the stars, and we will not be denied. The chamber remained silent for a long moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. Then, slowly, a sound began to build. It started with the Mindari, their bodies pulsing with colors of approval and admiration. The Kethrix joined in, clicking in rhythmic patterns that indicated agreement. Other species added their voices, their sounds, their gestures of support. By the time the vote was called, the outcome was clear. Humanity was admitted to the Galactic Council, not unanimously but by a significant margin. The Vorthen voted against, as expected, along with their closest allies and vassals. But the tide had turned. As Sarah left the chamber, surrounded by well-wishers from a dozen species, she thought again of her grandmother, of all the generations before her who had struggled and suffered and survived so that she could stand here today. We did it, she whispered. We made it to the stars. The years that followed humanity's admission to the Galactic Council were turbulent but transformative. Human colonies continued to expand. reaching into sectors of space that other species had deemed too dangerous or too unstable for settlement. Where the Vorthans saw barren rocks, humans saw potential. Where the Mindari saw chaos, humans saw opportunity waiting to be seized. Ambassador Sarah Chen returned to Earth after her historic speech, but she did not rest. She became the first human Secretary General of the newly formed Interspecies Relations Bureau, working tirelessly to build bridges between humanity and the dozens of alien species now willing to engage with them. The Vorthan watched humanity's rise with growing unease. High Commander Krazeth had been humiliated by the Council vote, his authority diminished in the eyes of his subordinates. In the Vorthan hierarchy, such shame was not easily forgotten or forgiven. Plots began to form in the shadows of the Vorthan homeworld, plans to contain the human threat by any means necessary. Meanwhile, humanity continued to surprise the galaxy at every turn. On a remote colony world called New Helsinki, human scientists made a breakthrough in energy production that revolutionized interstellar travel. Their ships, already remarkably efficient by necessity, became faster and more powerful. Trade routes that had taken years to traverse could now be completed in months, opening new possibilities for commerce and exploration. The Kethrix, long subjugated by the Vorthan, began secret negotiations with human diplomats. They spoke of alliance, of mutual defense, of a future free from Vorthan control. Similar conversations happened with a dozen other species, all tired of the old order, all seeing in humanity a chance for change that had seemed impossible before. 10 years after the Council vote, Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above Earth. She was older now, her hair gray, her face lined with years of work and worry. But her eyes still held the same fire that had burned in the council chamber when she had faced down the Vorthan High Commander. Beside her stood Dr. Marcus Webb, now the leading expert on Vorthan psychology, and Captain James Torres, commander of Earth's first interstellar battle group. "Intelligence reports are concerning," Torres said, his voice grim. "The Vorthan are massing ships near the border. Our sources say Krazeth has convinced the War Council to authorize a containment action against human expansion. They're going to try to stop us by force." Sarah nodded slowly. She had expected this. The Vorthan had never accepted humanity's rise. It was only a matter of time before they acted. "How many ships?" she asked. 12 battle groups, nearly 1,000 vessels, more than enough to overwhelm our current defenses. Marcus Webb studied a data pad, his expression thoughtful. "The Vorthan have never fought an enemy like us. Their previous conquests were against species that submitted quickly or were overwhelmed before they could adapt. They don't understand what they're facing." "And what are they facing?" Sarah asked. Webb looked up, meeting her eyes. "A species that doesn't know how to surrender. A species that has been fighting for survival since before we could walk upright. A species that, when pushed to the edge, becomes more dangerous, not less." Sarah turned to look at Earth, floating blue and beautiful in the void. Her home, humanity's home. The place where they had learned to survive ice ages and asteroid impacts, plagues and wars, and every other challenge the universe had thrown at them. "Send a message to the Mindari," she said, "and the Kethrix, and every other species that signed alliance agreements with us. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity is made of." The first Vorthan attack came 3 weeks later. A human colony on the frontier world of Artemis Prime was struck without warning. Vorthan warships appeared from hyperspace, their weapons already firing. The colony's defenses, designed for pirate raids and natural disasters, were overwhelmed in minutes. But the Vorthan made a crucial mistake. They expected the colonists to flee or surrender like every other species they had conquered. Instead, the humans fought. Every man, woman, and child capable of holding a weapon took up arms. They used mining equipment as improvised artillery. They collapsed tunnels on advancing troops. They booby-trapped buildings and turned the streets into killing grounds. By the time Vorthan reinforcements arrived, expecting an easy occupation, they found a devastated colony and 10 times the casualties they had anticipated. The humans had lost, but they had made the Vorthan pay dearly for every inch of ground. The message spread across the galaxy: humans did not surrender. Humans did not give up. Humans fought to the last breath, and even in defeat, they inflicted terrible costs on their enemies. The Vorthan War Council was shaken. Their models had predicted quick victories, easy conquests, the same results they had achieved 100 times before. Instead, they faced a grinding campaign against an enemy that seemed to grow more determined with every battle. "They are insane," Krazith raged at his commanders. "No rational species would sustain such casualties. No logical calculation supports their behavior." His advisors had no answers. They had studied human history, seen the records of their wars against each other. But reading about human tenacity was different from experiencing it firsthand. On Earth, the reaction to Artemis Prime was not despair or fear. It was fury. Cold, determined anger that burned through every level of society. Recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. Factories that had been producing consumer goods converted to military production overnight. Scientists abandoned their research to work on weapons and defensive systems. Within 6 months, the human fleet had tripled in size. Within a year, they had pushed the Vorthan back to the original border. Within 2 years, human forces were striking at Vorthan outposts, showing that they could project power as well as defend. The Mindari entered the war on humanity's side, their advanced technology combining with human determination to create a formidable alliance. The Kethrix launched an uprising against their Vorthan overlords, tying down troops that could have been used on the human front. Other species, seeing the tide turn, began to reconsider their positions. Ambassador Sarah Chen, now nearly 70 years old, made one final appearance before the Galactic Council. She walked slowly to the center platform, her body frail but her spirit unbroken. The chamber was packed, every seat filled, species from across the galaxy watching the woman who had started it all. 20 years ago, she began, her voice thin but clear, I stood in this chamber and told you the story of human survival. I told you about ice ages and asteroid impacts, plagues and wars. I told you that we had learned, through thousands of generations of hardship, to never give up. She paused, looking around the chamber. Some of you believed me, some of you did not, and some of you, she looked directly at the Vorthan delegation, thought you could test our resolve. The Vorthan High Commander, a successor to Krazith who had died in the first year of the war, shifted uncomfortably. The conflict had not gone as planned. Human determination had proven to be every bit as formidable as Sarah had claimed. We did not want this war, Sarah continued. We came to the stars seeking peace, seeking partnership, seeking a place among the community of intelligent species. But when war was thrust upon us, we fought. We fought with everything we had, as we have always fought, because that is who we are. She raised her head, and for a moment she looked like the young ambassador who had faced down the Vorthan 20 years before. We are survivors. We are fighters. We are dreamers and builders and explorers. We have walked through fire and emerged stronger. We have faced extinction and refused to die. We have taken every blow the universe can deliver and gotten back up, again and again and again. Her voice rose with power that belied her frail body. We are humanity. We survived ice ages. We survived asteroid impacts. We survived plagues that killed half our population. We survived wars that make your conflicts look like children's games. And now we build empires. She spread her arms wide. Not empires of conquest, not empires of domination, empires of hope, empires of cooperation, Empires where every species can contribute, can thrive, can reach for the stars together. This is what we offer the galaxy. This is what we fight for. This is who we are. The chamber erupted in applause, in sounds and colors and gestures of approval from dozens of species. The vote that followed was overwhelming. Peace with humanity, recognition of human claims, and the establishment of a new galactic order based on cooperation rather than conquest. Sarah Chen died 3 months later, peacefully, surrounded by her family. Her funeral was attended by dignitaries from 100 worlds. The Mindari sang songs of light. The Kethrix performed their ritual of honored passing. Even some Vorthan came, acknowledging the woman who had changed the galaxy. Her last words, recorded by her granddaughter, became humanity's motto: "We survive, we adapt, we overcome, and we never ever give up." In the centuries that followed, humanity continued to expand across the stars. They colonized worlds that seemed impossible, adapting to conditions that would kill most species. They made alliances with civilizations that had been enemies for millennia. They solved problems that had baffled the galaxy's greatest minds, and whenever they faced a new challenge, they remembered their history. They remembered the ice ages that had nearly killed them. They remembered the asteroid that had ended the dinosaurs and given their ancestors a chance to rise. They remembered the wars and plagues and disasters that had tested them again and again. And they remembered that they had survived it all. On a distant world at the edge of explored space, a young human explorer stood looking at a binary sunset, 2 suns setting over an alien horizon in shades of purple and gold. She was part of the first team to reach this system, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge ever further into the unknown. Behind her, her crew was setting up camp. They came from a dozen different species now, humans working alongside Mindari and Kethrix, and even a few Vorthan who had embraced the new order. They were building something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy's long history. An empire of cooperation, an empire of hope, an empire built on the simple truth that Sarah Chen had spoken so many years ago. The explorer smiled as she watched the suns disappear below the horizon. Tomorrow, they would begin mapping this new world, cataloging its resources and potential. Tomorrow, they would take another step into the unknown. Tomorrow, they would continue the journey that had begun when the first human ancestor looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. But tonight, she was content to stand and watch the sky fill with unfamiliar constellations, stars that no human eyes had ever seen before this moment. Tonight, she was content to be human. She thought of her ancestors, huddled in caves during ice ages, fighting off predators with nothing but stone tools and courage, building cities and civilizations from nothing but dreams and determination. She thought of all the struggles and sacrifices that had brought humanity to this moment, standing under alien stars on a world that had never known their footsteps. And she knew with absolute certainty that they would have been proud. Humanity had survived ice ages and asteroid impacts. They had survived plagues and wars and the vast emptiness of space. They had faced the judgment of ancient civilizations and proven their worth through blood and sacrifice and stubborn refusal to give up. And now, spread across 1,000 worlds, working alongside dozens of species, building a future that their ancestors could never have imagined, they were building empires. Not empires of conquest, empires of hope. This was humanity's legacy. This was their gift to the galaxy. This was the culmination of 200,000 years of survival against impossible odds. And it was only the beginning.